Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture. I have with me Chuck Pineau from Bonfire Press. So, welcome. Super excited to
Thank
have
you
you
for
on.
Oh, wow. I love live.
Yeah, I like live too, and you just made a great entrance.
I tried. Boom. There I am. I went like full Kramer for you. You're welcome.
It's wonderful, wonderful. So, just to give everybody a little bit of a background here, you are the owner and you do a lot of writing for Bonfire Press, and they've done
Mhm.
projects like Welcome to the Void. They've done things, and I might get the name wrong, and you'll correct me, Bilal or
Well, yep.
Bilal. Along with, you've done several editing on a variety of other comics, and you also have a very cool podcast, which we're going to talk about, which is Essence House.
Yes.
So I think the place to start here is that what is Bonfire Press exactly? Because this is a growing company, it's a new company, and it encompasses a lot of stuff. And you can see in the background one of your projects for those who are watching the video of this. So
Um, You know what? Why don't I hate when these guys come out and they have this like thick veneer of bullshit. I'm not that dude, so I'm just gonna take that veneer off, and you and I we're gonna be straight buds right away. When you get into this career, if someone says, "Oh, cool, you got your own thing," and they're like, "Yeah," and you're like, "Oh, who published you?" and you say, "I did," like you're self-pub, they're like, "Oh, good for you." So instead, you make your own company, and they go, "Oh, who did that?" and you go, "Bonfire Press," and they're like, "Oh, that's awesome," like I've never heard of it, but whatever. What is Bonfire Press is my own thing, but it's actually run by myself, my wife, and a good buddy of mine from back home in Canada. And the reason for that is we all have projects that we put into it together. Um, there's the thought that at some point we might bring in other people's stuff. Right now, financially, that's just not viable. So we just mostly kind of take care of our own stuff. Be able to show off what we do and show off what we love.
yeah, and to talk a little bit about that, because one of the first projects was Welcome to the Void that you did. And that was, and I'm not exactly sure the complete timeline here, and I might be taking a leap of faith here, but it almost seemed like it was done and then it was funded on Kickstarter to get the printing done.
Yep.
And so let's talk about that because it's an interesting story. We got Manny Johansson, I think is his name, and
Yeah.
he's a dishwasher, kind of just going through life, and then he gets this power slash magic that can bring him to this place called the Void, where anything you can imagine is possible or can be produced. And well, let's just say that there are some interesting people in there who might not be the most moral people out there with the best
Yeah.
intentions. And so it's dealing with a lot of stuff like that. So I'm really curious where the idea for that came from.
Um. So that's and I mean you're a writer too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know that a lot of this stuff comes from a lot of different places. First off, I'm a fantasy guy. I've always been fantasy. So to me, almost anything I write, it's got that tinge of fantasy in it. I could be writing science fiction. It's like there's a little bit of that in there. I could write romance and somehow fantasy shows up. But this was back in like 2000, like 2005, 6. I started to get the idea to Welcome to the Void, and really, it was because at that time I felt like Magic was such crap. Like no one was really kind of playing with Magic very well. I felt like the one person in comics who was really doing Magic was Doctor Strange, and it was stodgy. It felt old, and I really wanted to give Magic this kind of this jump start, this youthfulness. And I thought, okay, cool. So I started playing around with that. It also came from this very bizarre um, philosophy I've had my whole life, and the idea is that you can will anything into being, but you have to 100% believe it. So even at a young age, I thought if I stood at the top of this roof and I believed 100% that I could jump off and fly, I could fly. The problem is I never 100% believed I could jump, I could fly, so I did not. So I thought, what if there was this way? that willpower was able to kind of fuel and create magic. And so you start to see things happen around you in real life, things that people try to explain but can't. And uh, I've seen Wiccans do some really cool stuff, faith healers, all this stuff, and you're like, okay, as much as I want to disbelieve, there's some cool shit going on here. So that was my way of almost making that stuff believable, and then taking it to the next level where now we can go beyond that and really do some cool shit.
Yeah, and to talk about going beyond this, because this is not just the only thing, and the magic is somewhat of the focus of this comic, but we do get those highlights and I guess those accent points where we witness people's true character, we witness their struggles, we witness real issues. And so what is that like? Because it's a nice balance where we have this magic and we got that magical fantasy and it hits that genre box, but we also get real life stuff out of that as well.
Wow. You know what? Honestly, thank you. Like seriously, thank you. You've already, like, we're like 10 minutes into this, not even. You've already dove further into this than almost anyone else, and I've done a lot of interviews. So thank you. Um wow, you're right. So for me, that whole kind of delving into magic thing, it was like, if you dive into magic and you only focus on the fantasy, then it's easy to kind of get lost and throw it aside. So I felt like juxtaposing the fantasy with reality really kind of gave an edge to both things. You know what I mean? And I mean, because if you think about it, your life problems become so much more amplified because there's magic. And yet, in some regards, they also pale because of magic. It's like, oh man, my girlfriend left me. Yeah, you just made a fucking fireball, dude. That's true. I did, didn't I? That's weird. So, I just felt like there's just this like level of drama that we get to explore and play with because we have both of these things together.
And there's a lot of shit going on, to put it politely. And then there's also a lot of opportunity that this thing can go in, and it could go in, I think, like 50 directions at this point. And we're at its infancy. And so I'm really curious, what can fans expect over the next few issues and where this is going exactly, without giving too much away, because I want people to go out and buy it still.
No, yeah, that's awesome. You know, we haven't got to play with a lot with the magic, so there's going to be a lot of exploration about that. One thing I will tell you is that it will only be explained so far. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I've at least loved or enjoyed almost everything that's come out. So what I will say, without coming off as an angry fanboy, is I was very disappointed when they quantified the Force. And I felt like that was a misstep. So one thing you will not find is there will be no quantification of the void. The void simply is, and certain things will be revealed and explained to a point, but that will be about it. So you will get more of an explanation of what the void is. You will you'll see more of the magic, but you'll also see a lot more of how that affects his real life and the real life of the people around him.
And now I don't want to ruin too much because we are in
No.
infancy, and I do want to talk about something that's more my cup of tea, which was Bilal or Bilal.
Okay.
And I love demons, I love hell, I love goblins, imps, elves. My logo is an elf, everybody. I love all this stuff. And so this is what this is dealing with. And you're going to have to correct me slightly if I get something wrong. But the basic story of Bilal is the creator of hell is him. And he's, I guess, a drunken goblin demon, satanic creature, for lack of a better word here, who is sort of stripped of his power. He owns a bar and he wants to take hell back. and then kind of gets maybe a little drunk, maybe a little drugs in him, and the idea comes to him, and he's off on a quest to do it. So what was that like? Because there's a lot of stuff going on. There's sort of a human aspect to it, but it's really the conquest of getting hell back and dealing with a lot of things in that regard. So I'm really curious what made you go this route, because this is very different than the Void comic.
Thank you. So, that is my one of my favorite dudes, Sean Barber. He's the anchor on Welcome to the Void, and he came to me and he said, "Man, by the way, you're asking great questions. Good for you." He came to me and he said, "Hey, man, I've got this idea that I'd love to pitch you." Because he said, I think I have a really good idea, but I need a writer." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, what's up?" And so he's very much into the hell lore, which I'm not, and I'm not a horror guy. And so he pitched me this horror book, and I was like, "Okay, cool." And actually, I can explain it fairly well from the back of the book. Um, I We have a dedication in the back of the book, and I dedicate it to my three favorite ladies. One is my mom, one is my wife, and the other is Sean. And I say to Sean, the third is Sean Barber, who trusted me with his cool story, even when I fucked it up by adding beer and dick jokes. And that's the thing. He came to me with this really badass underdog hell story, and I was like, that's cool. Um, we haven't quite seen that take on it, but hell's been done. And he was like, "Well, yeah, but I really want to do a hell story." I said, "So I have an idea." And I came up with this, I kind of, built up the idea of having the horsemen in there and all this stuff. And as I started writing it, I realized I'm named after an Anglican priest. My grandfather was an Anglican priest. I was raised in the church. I'm agnostic, so I believe in God, but I also believe there's a lot of bullshit out there. And so what is God really? And so there's a lot of that going on. But if you believe in one, you also have to believe in the other. So that means, do I believe in demons? I kind of do. Do I really want to start shit with them? Not really. So I thought, why not make a joke of the whole thing? Have fun with it. And that's another quote I gave to my mom. My mom had said to me, it's right here in her dedication. First is my mom, who taught me that sometimes to combat evil, we must simply laugh at its absurdity. And that's really what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of like, you know what? Why even choose evil? So I'm just having a lot of fun with it. And actually, Sean and I talked last night. We're working really hard on issue 2. I had hit a big stumbling block and kind of ego block. And so he and I sat down and really talked out issue 2, and we laughed our asses off. Like, this one is going to be so funny. We have just the weirdest, zaniest ideas, and yet there's still this really epic battle going on. And that's the thing, is that everything around you is still epic, but it's also got these dick jokes and all this other crap. So
Yeah, I want to unpack this even further, because I'm not going to ruin parts of this. And
no, go to town.
I hate to say to everybody watching, I'm ruining parts of it. I really enjoyed this book for a lot of reasons. And I like the fact that he's the complete underdog. He's taking back power, and he's dealing with war. And he's fighting a character named War, which is ironic in its own right that he's committing a war. And the fact that he's got like only an imp by his side, and he's doing it. And he's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We got this. We got this." Is pretty much the attitude. And then, well, he does get it for those who are interested in understanding. So, what was that like? Even throwing that out there and just having slight ironic positions and irony all throughout the book, because it really, you're watching something that shouldn't be funny, yet it is, or reading, I should say. And it's almost a comedy. It's not even like horror. It's almost
yeah,
a comedy that shouldn't work, and it does.
it's because I can make comedy work, but I don't know if I can make horror work. So I'm like, why not just lean into what you're good at, buddy? So, yeah, I mean, I've always loved the gray of everything. I'm not a black and white guy, which is, it also speaks to like the being agnostic and all that kind of stuff. I see all those sides and stuff. So, to me, a lot of evil is evil. Yeah, it's also pretty fucking funny. You know what I mean? And good is can be pretty dumb too sometimes. So why are we not laughing at these things? Why are we not seeing these things and just being like, really right now? So I had and I feel like if anyone was gonna have a real sense of humor, it'd be the guys with the power in hell. Like they're unaffected by all these terrible things that we see and whatnot, and they've seen these terrible things, and again, they're completely unaffected by it. So all these stupid things that humans do and everything, it's hilarious to them, I would have to imagine. So I think irony is just the funnest tool we can play with, and that tends to be my ball peen hammer. I tend to carry that one over my shoulder an awful lot.
Yeah, and there's so much more coming in this comic. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to, because we've seen this, we've seen versions of Lucifer. And Lucifer is clearly on the opposing side. Because I don't want to say one side's good or bad, because I don't
Yeah,
think
I
that
think
that's
that's
a
fair.
good definition anymore for this comic. Opposition, and then the four horsemen, as they stand, are with Lucifer to some degree. And who knows what's going to happen with that. Just throwing it out there, red herring, maybe not. Maybe I'm onto something, I don't know yet. I only read the first issue for those who know, so I'm taking just as much of a guess as everybody else. But clearly, the Four Horsemen are in play as well.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
they've been done in a lot of ways. I'm a big East West guy, and that entire comic and a variety of other stuff, and like that deals with the Four Horsemen and a bunch of other stuff does. So what is that like, and what is the twists coming with that? Because clearly this threw out everything in the bathtub, for lack of a better word, and has reimagined everything.
Um, yeah, so yeah, I mean you nailed it. We've seen the Four Horsemen before. So a lot of that is a really good mixture of Sean going in and doing this research and saying, hey, you know what? This is kind of the depths of what that horseman is, and this is what that horseman looks like even in other cultures and whatnot, and looking into that and us kind of playing with all those aspects while also me coming in with the absurdity and being like, okay, but how do we screw with this too? How do we have some fun with this? So, it really is using both of those and just kind of and sort of finding those happy mediums.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, because I don't want to ruin too much, and I don't want to put you on the spot of ruining too much. But clearly they're coming, and I have a feeling that this is going to be a long ballad story type of thing. And one of the things
I,
that
you know what? You've been already immensely great. So I'm going to give you something. My aim for this is to have it finished as a nice four-parter. I want it to have an end. Um, I also, though, want to leave it just open enough that if people really like it, we have some stories that we can play with and explore and move on. So I intend for it to be a four-parter. I intend for it to, one day be a graphic novel that we would love to shop around and show off. And I have said it before, and I will say it again for you. In the next one, we have a two-parter or a twofer. It's Belial and Company versus Pestilence and Famine together.
okay, that's good to
Yeah.
know. And I have a feeling that when people read this first issue, because a bunch of people probably are hearing you and this comic for the first time that are going to be seeing this, they're going to be picking it up and taking a look at it, because it's really an amazing read. And I also think what really helps with this read is the fact that it's done black and grayscale, and that adds a touch to it. And one of the things that I'm not like an expert on black and white comics, but I enjoy them. I enjoy The Walking Dead in that, and there is a skill to that, and it's done very well. And I know that you're the writer, but even making that decision changes the dynamic of this comic, and I think it affects it in a very positive way.
I think so too. Also, I feel like there was a especially in the way that Sean did that kind of gray wash. It's not just a black and white. There's again some of that gray to it, and that speaks to the gray that I was talking about, and the gray that I see all of that being. So yeah, man, you know, there's a couple different reasons. Sometimes it's just as much as
Money,
colorists are expensive.
money,
you know?
money's a big thing.
Yeah, but it's also that, like, how much was color going to up the game of this book? And we really felt like we could tell a really fun zine style story, but still give it that kind of polished look. And we never had to worry about color. So, yeah, man.
And we're going to table it right there because I could talk about this. I'm actually going to go see, and after this, I'm probably going to go buy all 4 issues if I can and have you ship them to my apartment because I actually want
Oh, dang.
in my collection. This is one of the ones I want. And
Okay.
I'm super stoked. And we're going to talk after about that because I put my money where my mouth is. For those
I appreciate that.
who don't know, and I read the first issue, and I could tell you that it is an amazing read. It's 37 pages, I want to say, so it's pretty substantial for an indie book out there. And so we're going to table right there, and I do want to talk about the other side of things and kind of touch a little upon Kickstarter. Because I don't know if Bilal was done on Kickstarter, but I know Into the Void was. And
Yeah, Bilal was too.
there we go. So they were both done on Kickstarter. So you've done a bunch of Kickstarter projects, and I think you've edited a few also. So what makes you choose Kickstarter over a platform like Patreon or Indiegogo to get your work off the ground?
Okay. I will say one of those things is not politics. Just so we're all aware of that, because I know that for some people that is an option. Is that political leanings tend to throw someone one way or the other, and that is not me at all. I will say, so I'm very familiar with Kickstarter. Being an editor, it means that, including up to this month, I've had a book on Kickstarter with my name on it for about the last year and a half to 2 years of every month. So someone is always doing something, putting it up there, and my name is on it. So I'm very familiar with it. I know a lot of people who've worked with it. There's certain aspects of Kickstarter that I really like. One of those big things is I like that it's almost like a social platform. You, of course, don't get to talk a lot or communicate so much, but you can follow people. And so that means that anyone who follows me on Kickstarter, they see when I back things, and they see when I start up a project. They also see when the people they're following back things. So I feel that really opens up your project to an awful lot of eyes. And so I feel like you don't just have to push it on your socials. Kickstarter kind of steps up and says, hey man, we push it too by allowing all the supporters to also passively push the book, because they put any amount of money, and Kickstarter doesn't say, Fred Jones put $15 in there. No, it just says Fred Jones backed this book. And it's like, okay, great. That's cool. Somebody else sees that and they go, oh man, that looks kind of neat. Let's take a look at it. So that puts an awful lot of eyes on the project. Indiegogo doesn't do that. Indiegogo has the flexible the flexible goal. I'm a poor son of a bitch. I can't do the flexible goal because I need what I'm asking for to make this happen. Like I wanted that goal because that's what I need to print it and make sure that I get the number of the quantity that I want at the price I want, so that I make money, so you guys enjoy a good product, all that kind of stuff. So the non-flex goal is really important to me. So that tends to be why I do it. As far as Patreon feels like a completely different thing. For Essence House, we do have a small Patreon that goes with that. Patreon feels like, because it's month to month and it's a constant thing, it feels like a lot of work. And I'm a lazy son of a bitch who's already doing a lot of stuff. So Patreon is just not one of the things that I want to touch right now.
That's why I'm not on Patreon. Is
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I have way too much stuff going on, and I'm
Yep.
running this show. I'm running my main podcast. I'm doing a few writing projects, and I write for my website. And I am overburdened, and I have a day job as it is. And so, and I just don't see the rate of return for me as a podcaster on Patreon, and for the amount of time it would require. But speaking about Kickstarting and back to Kickstarter, because this is about you, it's not about me. I assure you.
It's about both of us. You seem like a good dude.
No, this is all about you. It's all about my
Okay.
guest. That's what this is for. It's to give people who deserve an opportunity who have not gotten one. And that's what I'm
Okay.
about right now on this show. But talking about Kickstarter, because one of the things that it seems, and I mentioned it earlier, is that, and I've been noticing this a lot more, is that a lot more people are using Kickstarter almost as a pre-order form, where the project is done and now it's just a matter that, hey, we need X amount of money to print this and get you a physical copy. Because I would imagine that with your project, you could send it out and put it on Comixology or another indie platform and have it in a digital thing just like that. And it's much easier, and you could do it digitally, but this is much more for the physical copy.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. It really is about the physicality of it. And the physicality of it is so important to me, and that's not to diminish the importance of a digital copy and the importance of people who love, there are people who just, they love the digital. They want it all on their Kindle. They love the easy access of it. That's fantastic. If you asked me to search for a book of mine, I'd be like, oh crap, give me a while. I'm going to have to look for it. So whereas on your Kindle, you're just like search for, and there it is. But I love physical copies. I love, if I like your book, I want a physical version of it. I want to be able to hold it. I want to be able to flip through a stack one day and go, oh shit, yeah, I got to read that again. I want to look at that. So that's really important to me, and so that's why Kickstarter is really important to me, because that allows me to get that print run and really hopefully make some money off of it. The more you can make, the more you can print, the cheaper it is per book, which means per book you're also making a little bit more. So yeah.
And one of the things when we talk about this pre-order form and the way I think Kickstarter is going is that the project is done. And that changes the game, in my opinion, a lot of ways. Where once a project is done, we're now not waiting 3 years for something to come out. I backed a project, and it took 24 months for it to get into my hands, and it was $40 overpriced when we look at it. And so what I find with your Kickstarter, and I was going through it, is that your bar was extremely low considering the project was done. The turnaround time was pretty quick. And I think that's also a significant change that's occurring. And it's not just your Kickstarter. I've had about 10 people on who have done that as well. And so I'm curious, does that go into your Kickstarter? And then do you see that being more of the future of Kickstarter?
Well, the thing is that, and there's a lot of people out there like you who have been burned. So for me, I feel like it's easier to trust me. And I often, if people will come to me and they'll say, does my book have to be done? Doesn't have to be, but it helps, because at the very bottom, they have this thing where it's like, what are the risks? And I don't want the risk to be, you might not get the book, you know? I don't want that to even be a consideration. So for me, I feel like the closer I can get to it being done, like Belial was a good chunk of the way through. I believe all the pencils were done, most of the inks, and we were moving on to lettering. So to me, that was like 75% done in my mind. Um, uh, Welcome to the Void was done except for lettering when we launched, and within days after launching, we were lettered and done. So it's very important to me personally to be as close to done as possible so that we can get it out as fast as possible, but also so that there's less likelihood that things go wrong because the first Kickstarter I was ever a part of, it passed, and then during it funded, and then during the Kickstarter, the guy actually went bankrupt, and that book to this day still sadly hasn't come out, and that's really difficult and disappointing for me as a writer. For him as the publisher, I'm sure it sucks to have that on your shoulder. For everybody, you made it and yet you failed, and that just it sucks, and nobody wants to be there. And that's not like a you suck to him. It's like a, man, this situation sucks. Life got in the way, and it's got a habit of doing that, and that stinks. And so if I can take away as much chances of that happening as possible, I want to do that. So that's like, we're working on issue 2 of both Belial and Welcome to the Void. And Welcome to the Void, I had to push off to the side because I didn't have funds to pay my colorist. And so I just said, hey, this has to stop. I'm not willing to move any further until we're able to pay you off so we can get this done and get this moving. So,
And
yeah.
and even to talk about that, because I've seen, and the Kickstarter I was funding that was that incident. The person had like 4 or 5 projects going on at the same time, and I can tell you that I've never run a Kickstarter. I have no intention of running a Kickstarter in the next 2 years. And I don't even know where to start because I'm not in that space at the moment. But if I do go, I'm only focusing on one project at a time. That seems to be the way you handle it. And obviously, when you're editing a book, you're not the main star of that running that project. And so, is that how you're planning to run your Kickstarters? Because I'm assuming you're going to do a Kickstarter for Into the Void, the second issue, and Belial going forward, because that seems to be the easiest way how to get this thing off the ground.
Yep. And that is the aim, is just to be as done as possible every time. Also because at this point, you do see kind of what you're able to bring in, and you hope that will always go up. But even still, you look and you go, all right, the more of that burden I can take upon myself, the more we can offer cool stuff, and hopefully start to put some of that extra money, if God forbid you're able to somehow have extra money, we can put into the next one. And so if you're able to pull that off and make that happen, it's like, great, cool. Let's pay the penciler and let's start on the next one.
Yeah, and even to go further into the Kickstarter, because you had some interesting rewards. And especially because you said that you've been involved in probably, I think if my math's right, like 18 or more projects of your work and then editing. And so what is that like on the editing side? Because you have edited a lot of books, and I don't have the entire list here, but you've done a
I don't have
lot of
the
stuff.
entire list here. You're good.
You've done a lot of stuff from things that are more adult rated to more kid friendly and everything
Yep.
in between. So what is that experience like, editing and working and making sure something makes sense in a book and making sure that the overall product is good that's coming out on the
Yeah.
indie scene?
I was on a panel last night, and they were asking about submissions and all that kind of stuff to editors, and I said, on that banner, the most important word up there is freelance. I work for you. So this isn't about me telling you what you have to do. This is me telling you my suggestions and what I think is going to work.
And make it better.
You hired me for a reason. You either trust me or you don't. That doesn't mean that I have to win every battle, and I'm okay with not winning every battle. But I'll give you reasons why I think my suggestions are good and why I think they'll work and why I think they're the way to go. If you don't believe me, or that's fine. Now, if I'm finding that I'm losing all of the battles, I might say, okay, maybe you don't need me. Or, maybe don't put my name on the book. And that hasn't happened very often, but sometimes it's something that you have to bring up. And, people tend to be hurt. What? No, you're my editor. Well, no, because you either trust me or you don't, and it's okay if you don't. But it, I'm here for a reason, and you got to let me do my thing. So it's not easy. My mission statement when I work with you, with anybody, is I want this to be the best version of itself. We're not remaking Watchmen here, guys. We're just trying to do something really cool, and we want it to be the best of it that it can be. So when you bring me something, I'm going to ask for the who, what, why, basically. Not who, but why are we doing this project? Who is our audience? And why are we doing this? Or sorry, did I say why already? Why are we doing this project? Who are we doing this project for? And what's the purpose of it? And that stuff is really important because I need to know who your audience is. You talked about, and I've done children's book, and I've done the very adult, and everything in between almost. And so that means that it's like, you can't come to me and say, I'm doing a superhero book. All right, cool. What's your audience? Everybody who loves superheroes. Yeah, it doesn't work. We need an audience. Are you cursing in this book? Are you blanking over the curses? Are we going gee whiz? Those are 3 different audiences right there. And you can't do all 3. You can't do gee whiz, golly Batman, and fuck Batman in the same book. That doesn't work. Those are 2 different projects. So we need to work all that out, and we need to make sure that all the steps we make really aim towards that audience. I remember one, it was, I wanted to be a little more on the on the general audience style. So I don't want too much swearing and like I don't want any swearing. Once in a while, we might, if someone gets really angry, we might put the squiggly lines. And I was like, okay, cool, yeah, we can do that. And we did it. And then the second issue, they started to go a lot more adult, and like someone was decapitated right away. And I went, no, that's not your audience. You've created your audience already with number 1. We have to be consistent. You're not allowed to do that. You already changed yourself. So, those are the important things that I look at and that I try to help people with.
And editing is extremely important, and it's not really respected to some degree, where people don't understand how important an editor is. One of my first interviews was Denny O'Neil, which was pretty much the Nightfall trilogy. And then
Yeah.
a few years later, I had Chuck Dixon on my main podcast, and I could tell you that Denny didn't believe editors should be on books, and I don't know what he still believes, but without Denny spearheading that and making sure everything was in continuity, Nightfall would have been a nightmare. And for those who don't know who Nightfall is, I think it's like 40 issues plus on, and there's part 1, part 2, and part 3, and there's a lot of shit that goes on. And just think of Bane. That's where Bane kind of came out of. So
Yeah.
just to give everybody an idea of editing, and that's at a very top level. And I can imagine that when you're doing something really bizarre, like Into the Void, for instance, you definitely need an editor, especially if you're building out 10 issues, to
Yeah.
keep, because an editor is kind of like the rafters or the bumpers, and when you're going bowling and you don't know how to bowl, is the best way how I describe an editor. And so I just wanted to make that point clear, and I think it's super important. And I don't know, can you say what panel you were on, and is it up on the internet? Because I think it would be so helpful.
For which?
You said you were on a panel just recently. Is it up on the internet?
Yeah, it is. So there's this one site. It's on cons. It's on Facebook. ON-CONNS, and they do lots of different panels. This specific panel was on submitting to an editor, which is funny because they didn't. Now the thing is that the woman who did it, she calls herself the comic book noob, and so she's currently on her journey to creating a comic. And so she brings these people in, and I came out right away and I said, look, you don't have any submissions editors here. And there is a difference. So first off, one of the things I said was, hey, if you're submitting to an editor, um, who who is your audience? Or sorry, if you're submitting to an editor, why? Because in this day and age, if you're, so many people just jump straight out and they're like, hey, we gotta give this to to Image, and it's like, who are you? Like Image doesn't know who you are. They're not gonna pick you up, and you're in debt to Image before you even drop that book. So they're not just going to pick up anybody. So really, your first submission should be to yourself or to someone that you know or to an editor that you respect, and you go, hey man, this is my script. I'd really like to use you. What do you think? So
Yeah.
that was a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think people should go find that and watch that, especially if they want to do this comic stuff, because I think it would be so helpful. And that's the reason why I bring it up, is because we could probably talk for like the next hour just on editing. And I think that that's just really helpful. And that's probably arguably one of the best pieces of advice that's been said on my
Yeah.
show for the past, 10 weeks. And having said that all now, though, I do want to talk about the business side of it beyond editing. And
Yeah.
I want to talk about how COVID-19 has kind of torpedoed everything, for lack of a better word. And
The
I
dirty
think
word, huh?
there's a lot of other words that we could use, but it's been a clusterfuck, for lack of a better word here.
Uh-huh.
And so one of the things that I'm very curious about is that how have you been affected both on the creativity side as well as, I don't know how many cons you go to, but the con scene is a nightmare. And let's be realistic, it's not coming back till 2021 the earliest.
Well, that's not true. Tampa Bay Comic Con just said, we're up. We'll see you July 17th. So
Okay, okay.
yeah, Florida has said, and you know what? I'm going to be perfectly honest, and I know I'm going to have a lot of people who yell at me. Cons are important to me. I have a fuck ton of books here to sell, and as much as I would love to send them to different, and I've already sent them to like online auctions of taking care of them and stuff like that. I make more money, and I make a better impression if it's face to face. So if you and I meet at a show, I'm able to sell you better, and hopefully, I can get your email, and we can, create this, add you to my Facebook, you know,
Create a community.
pass you my card. We become a community, and I now have a fan. That's harder to do with a store.
Or
So I
online
really
for that
want
matter.
conventions back. Um, Texas is probably going to bring them back too. I would not be surprised. And you'll see me with my big bottle of spray and my face mask, and I'll be selling books because I I need to. As much as I don't want to, I really need to be out there. Um, for work, it's made me super fucking busy, so busy because everyone's like, "Oh, I can't sell. I'm going to make." Chuck, you editing? Okay, let's do it. So yeah, it's made me incredibly busy. So yeah, that's been huge. Creativity, you know, stuck in the house with the kids. They're not happy about it. I'm not happy about it. There's a certain level of depression and worry. My wife is a frontline worker, so that's worrisome too. So creating has been very difficult, and I know that, Belial and everything else has to move forward, and it's just been tough. The one nice thing has been working on Essence House. Um, I don't have a fucking choice. Like, we were dropping episodes every 2 weeks, and you don't have a choice. That episode has to come out. You have to have it written, and that's that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So that forced me to be creative even when I didn't want to. And there was that was helpful in a certain way, because at least it opened up, kind of kept those gates open so that there was always some creativity happening and I didn't just stagnate.
Yeah, and to jump off of that, and I'm curious still about the cons, and then we're going to get to Essence House.
Yeah.
How do you think that fans are going to respond? Because clearly people are freaked out, and it's definitely going to change cons. And I think that there's going to be a time, whether it's 6 months or a year, where people might not be so gun ho to go to a convention, or people might take more practices into consideration. I mean, I'm a panelist at a lot of cons, and I was just on a conversation with Anime NYC, and they might not like me saying this, but I made the suggestion that maybe you gotta distance people in panel rooms. Because I'll be honest, when you have 250 people in a room, and I've had 250 people sitting, everybody's on top of each other, you know, that could easily create a problem for somebody if they're asymptomatic. And so I'm just curious how you see that, because you see it from a very different angle than me, most likely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not sure that I do. It's still definitely worrisome. My mom is a nurse, and she said to me, she said, "Well, you have to make sure you practice social distancing." And I'm like, "Ma, there's a 4 foot table between us. Like, that's already there. Plus I'll have my mask and stuff on. I'm gonna be as smart as I can." And she
No
was like,
shaking hands or anything like that.
"No." She said, "Well, if someone wants to shake your hand," I said, "I give them the fist bump, and then I wash my hands right there." Oh, okay, that's not bad. And I was like, "Yeah, like, is it? No, I mean, it's like, look, let's be honest. It's like sex, all right? Um, I can wear a condom and I can do all this stuff. It's not 100%, but I still want to have sex. You know what I mean? So, what do we do here? How do we do this? I don't want you to get pregnant, and I don't want to get nothing. What are we gonna do?" So, that's what I'm doing. And how many guests relate conventions to STDs? I'm sure it's not enough, but that's how I'm rolling it right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But now we mentioned Essence House, and that's just an interesting podcast, and it's more of a serial podcast versus an
Yep.
interview based podcast. And I like podcasting. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy doing, and I thoroughly enjoy doing this. It's technically not a podcast, but it sort of is. It's more like a Facebook Live type interview setting.
I'd call it a podcast. I don't care what anyone says.
That works too. That works too.
Yeah,
But
right.
what is Essence House? Because you mentioned it. Every 2 weeks, you got to drop something. There's a lot of writing that is put into this. If anybody thinks that there is not writing put into this, they are damn wrong.
Yeah. So the thing about Essence House is Essence House, when we're talking about podcasts, you and I are doing two very different things, and that doesn't take anything from either of them. They're just different.
I don't
Um,
want to do what you're doing. I have no desire to.
uh,
It would ruin my life. And that's not taking anything. Like, I enjoy things that are curation and serial based, and I think they're
yeah,
wonderful. But I'm an interviewer at heart. I love doing this,
I
and
respect it. Let's be again. We'll take the veneer off. Let's be honest. Um, it's not necessarily the way I would go either, but my buddy Eric Cockrell had this cool idea initially, like in 2018, we were gonna do NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, and we were going to write this series of books. He'd do one, I'd do the other, and it didn't really take off for us. We didn't get that far into it, but we really liked the idea of what we were working with, and he had sat on that idea for a while. So he came back to me earlier in 2019, I think like around September, October, and he said, "Hey, Nano's coming up again." And I said, "Yeah, it didn't work. Like, I don't think that that's what we're doing." And he's like, "Okay." So, but I like the story. I like the idea. And so we started hammering it out more. And he thought, "What about an audiobook?" And I thought, audiobook's cool, but it's still a lot of work. Like, making an entire novel is an awful lot of work. And he said, "That's true." And then we came to, ooh, what about an audio drama? That way, you're basically dropping a chapter every 2 weeks. And so the format that we've created is we have a chapter that comes out every 2 weeks, which is about 3,500 words. which means that by the time we get to episode 10, we end up being around 35,000 to 4,000 words because some go long. Then if we do 2 seasons like that, that's a novel. And we're like, oh, okay, that's a really cool way to eventually make a book. And the thing that we've learned from coming from comics, being a comic creator, is you write a floppy and you bring it out and you don't make an awful lot of money about it with it. But if you make, say, like 3, 4, 5, and that's an arc, cool. Now I'm going to make that a trade. And if I keep doing that and I get a couple trades, I make that a graphic novel. And you find a way to sell that product multiple times. And each time you sell it, it becomes more profitable. You know, that trade, I already have the stuff. I don't have to pay my artists anymore. I don't have to do, I might buy another cover or something, or I might do a couple of little 4-page stories to add to it so that there's some added value to it. But I'm not really spending even as much as I would for one floppy. So now that is a lot more profit. And you go on and go on like that. So we took that same idea with the audio drama and we went, if we bring this out, it's free. We'll do a Patreon with it. And our Patreon is very simple. It's $2 a month. For $2, you get the episodes a month early. And then we do a Talking Dead style chat show afterwards, where we take your questions, theories, and stuff. Myself, Eric, and our good friend interviewer, Jess Rogie, we go over that and we just have a blast. And so you get that too. So we were like, for $2 a month, that's really good. And then, you know, we don't have anything else. We're not offering anything else. We're not trying to do anything. And then down the road, we'll have the audiobook, we'll have the novel, and it was just taking one chapter at a time.
And we made a mistake because what is this story about? The most important part.
I should talk about that, shouldn't I? Essence House is an audio drama. It's basically, it touches on a lot of different genres and whatnot, but at its core, it is a sci-fi time travel story. And it's a family drama too. And it's basically about a family that has split apart, cousins, all that kind of stuff. They all used to live under one roof. And there's a lot of mystery that goes under that roof. And since then, the home that they all grew up in, Essence House, has been destroyed. Everybody lives all over the country and whatnot. And one of the cousins, Tim, comes back. He's asked by his uncle, who's a very strange character, to take care of what is now a plaza that is on the grounds of their once home. And as he works on those grounds, he starts to find weirdness and he starts to find out about the house and what was going on there. His other cousin, Tristan, comes in and mystery blows up. We start with a dude just taking care of a plaza, and we end up with dodging bullets and craziness and time travel and everything. So it really does run the gamut. And that's just season 1.
And where can people listen to it, find it? It is free right now.
Yep.
So
you can find it. So each episode is about 20 minutes long. You can find them on pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all that kind of stuff, iHeartRadio. We got them on all those. We also have our own website. You can go to essenceHouseStory.com. You can check it out there. And then, of course, if you get really excited and you're like, ooh, because we have some extras coming over this little season break, you're more than welcome to hop onto that Patreon and you can get all that free stuff coming in. We've got, like I said, some little one-shot stories happening in the middle. We have some documentary style stuff. And then in August, we're going to be getting right back into season 2 again.
Perfect. And then now, I think we're about to wrap this up, and I would like to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. You know, you got your comics, website, social. You know, I think we just beat Essence House and sold that to some people who want to check that out. So what other things can people find you at, and how can they support you? Because you got a bunch of comic stuff out there, and more's coming.
Thank you so much. Well, my name is Chuck Pineau, Pineau. You can find me on Facebook. feel free to add me and talk to me. If you're not that social, I get it. You can go to Bonfire Press on Facebook, and you can check out what we do there. And I'm always talking about what's going on there and trying to show you flashes of what we're doing. And that's not even just my projects. My wife has projects. My buddy has projects. Friends have projects that we show off on there. So we have stuff going on there. For Belial has its own Facebook as well. You can go to Belial Comic. You can check that out. You can find me on Twitter at Chucky Pin. You can find, you know what? One thing I didn't get to talk about, and it's going to be very quick. I do indie comic reviews. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about indie comics as much, and I wanted to be able to talk about them and tell you guys about what I like. So I have my own YouTube channel, Chuck's Raw Reviews. Feel free to go check it out. We just hit our 50th episode, so that was kind of really cool. And then we have Essence House, which, as I said before, essencehousestory.com or anywhere that you can find podcasts.
Well, you have plenty of opportunity to support him, and there's no excuse. And clearly, Kickstarters are coming, and things are a bit murky because everything is sort of messed up due to COVID-19. But I'm sure those Kickstarters will be up on your Facebook page. That's Bonfire Press. So for those who want to know what's going on and you're a little bit hesitation in the water, unless you don't have internet and electricity, there's no reason not to follow somebody on Twitter. Check out YouTube, check out the podcast, check out the Facebook page, comment on the Facebook page, comment on Twitter, because those things are helpful, subscribing and just saying, hey, I got 20 minutes while, I'm just chilling out, doing something else. Tonight I'm going to be playing Overwatch and I'm going to be listening to some of Essence House, and checking it out. So you can easily do it, everybody, and there's no excuse for not supporting anymore, because a lot of what Chuck does is free.
Yep.
And then there's an upgraded level if you want to support on a financial position. So no excuse, anybody. I think we're at a table right there, because it's been great, and I'm so happy we got to do this, and I'm so happy.
No, really, and you did the deep dive, brother. I appreciate you. You really did. You keep this up, all right?
Yeah, you know what it is? I enjoy it, and it's just like going down the rabbit hole like Alice.
I like it. You're doing it, man. I appreciate you.
I always take a compliment. People don't compliment, and compliments are nice, whether it's from a man or a woman, if somebody calls me attractive, I take it and I run with it.